Welcome, everyone, to today's webinar. We're going to talk about method books, differentiated instruction, sound innovation, smart music, lots of fun stuff to talk about. My name is Ryan Sargent. I'm here with the legend, Chris Bernotas, and this is exciting. I think we're going to dive right in.
Excellent. If
you have questions and comments during the webinar, you'll see the chat button in the bottom of your screen there. You can get in touch with me and Chris that way by choosing panelists. You can send comments or questions to the group as a whole so everyone can read. That's the easiest way to get in touch with us, and we've got some time set aside at the end to answer any questions you may have. So don't hesitate to speak up, and love to have the conversation. A little bit about me. I lead the marketing team at MakeMusic. I'm a former music educator myself. I'm on the board of Time. I love technology. I love music education. I'm a trombone player. I'm sorry for that part of it. This is my jam, talking about this kind of stuff and getting how to use technology and how to kind of incorporate all of this stuff to help make classrooms better. I'll let Chris do the honors and introduce himself as well.
Sure. So my name is Chris Bernotas, actually. Nobody ever knows how to say my name, and it's been said so many different ways that it's great. And just a little trivia, it's just Chris. It's actually not Christopher. So that's another thing that my whole life I've always had just Chris. Oh, really? It's just Chris? So I love all this stuff too. I love the combination of technology. I love music, and I love teaching. So my primary role is as a music educator, which I've been doing for 28 years. And I've been doing it for the past 25 years in New Jersey at Mountain Lakes High School with all different kinds of ensembles. And this topic of diversity and how we deliver information to students is perfect because we deal with many different students in many different roles. So my many different roles would include being a teacher of different ensembles, also being fortunate enough to write music. So I have many pieces published for string orchestra, for band, and it's been a really excellent learning experience. And the other part that I have are books that we'll talk a little bit about today. But they're all geared toward education and helping students connect with people. So that's a little bit about me. You can read the details at your leisure.
Awesome. So let's jump right in. What is differentiation, differentiated instruction, which kind of regardless which words you use for it, what does it really mean?
Differentiation, if you look it up, which we all do on the computer now, what is define differentiation? It's become a buzzword, or it's one of these buzzwords that keeps coming back in education. But it's essentially individualized education for your students. What it is actually how you deliver information to each learning style that a student presents to you. So I thought about this and actually tried to give it a written definition for myself, which is kind of what it says here on the screen, on the next screen, which is it's creating opportunities for all students to grow, realizing that each student is different. And the way that I've approached my teaching with students is to realize, and this is a 25-year, 28-year progress. I've done it so many different ways, but the way that I've morphed in my teaching is to realize that students grow from point A to point B. You're always going to have high-achieving students that by natural given talent are going to be super amazing players, and you're going to have kids that are struggling, or that not are struggling because maybe physically they're immature, their muscles aren't ready to make the kinds of sounds we need them to make, or they just have a lack of experience. They haven't been playing the instrument that long. So we have to do this thing called grading. So thinking about grading and assessment, realizing that kids are all different, and what's fair for one is not fair for them all. So an A for Susie, who can play her scales at 160 beats a minute, in 16th notes, is not the same as what I can expect from Johnny, who cannot do that. But if Susie can play her scales at 140 and she's grown to 160 beats a minute, and Johnny never played a scale in his life, now he can play a scale. That's point A to point B. So differentiation to me is realizing that students grow at different rates and with different levels of success, and my job as a teacher is to try to get each one of them connected in a different way. So, I'm sorry, you have a comment?
Oh, I was just going to say, okay. Putting the emphasis on growing is so key there, right? That it's not necessarily about a fixed objective at the end. like, you're using the example of a specific tempo, but acknowledging that every student has the room to grow, right, makes all the difference.
And and I was thinking about this too, because as this has come up and it's becoming like the latest magazines of teaching, and it reinvents itself all the time. What's the downside for teachers when you think about individualized education? The downside is that we have to really plan for it. We have to give time and thought about planning for not just the 100 kids that are singing the ensemble, but each one of those 100 students that might be sitting there, or 30 or 15, whatever you have to have. So that means that we have to put the time in to plan. We have to put the time into research. How is a student going to learn? Where is their point A? And what is the appropriate point B to try to push them toward? So to me, that downside is actually not a downside. That downside is what makes good teachers excellent teachers. It's kind of what prompts us to be better ourselves, because we also have point A's to point B's as teachers. So we have to differentiate ourselves just like we have to differentiate for our students. So that's what differentiation means for me. And honestly, in my different ensembles, differentiation looks, well, different. I overuse the word because they're all different groups. If I have a 9th grade ensemble, well, that's different than my advanced wind ensemble. Or if I have a clarinet sectional, that's different than my trumpet sectional. So it takes a lot of reflection to think about how best to deliver instruction. And also, I think the makeup of each school and student body is going to affect what your definition of differentiation is. So anybody that watches or listens to this, I would definitely encourage you to sit down and think about your community, your school community, your classrooms. What does it actually mean to you? And I find it helpful once in a while to literally write my own definition down. What exactly, if I had to put this in an essay, what would I write? If I'm answering a question on an application, what does it say? Because I wind up changing that. And what it is today, it might not be tomorrow, or whatever the next situation is. But just that fundamental question of what does it actually mean beyond a blog article or beyond dictionary.com. Yeah.
So then taking it beyond the what, why use it? What's the benefit? Why is this becoming more and more of a buzzword? Why is it so important in education today?
I think the outgrowth of how things have changed for kids. I really actually believe that it is harder to be a kid now than when I was a kid. I know, like, we all have the stories of, well, when I was your age, I would walk uphill both ways in the snow to school. And now kids have everything. It's really hard to be a kid. And I see that with students at school and all the things that they have going on, both in their lives in terms of athletics, academic pressures. Families are different. The stresses that are being put on kids are different. And then we as music teachers, we expect that they're going to really practice a lot. And we really expect that they're going to give their best effort all the time. So does their math teacher. So does their English teacher. So does their art teacher. So does their soccer coach. And so do their parents. Kids now have more things going on. We have to look at them individually. And I think it's important to see them as human beings that are struggling in one way or another, and really giving them an appropriate amount of instruction and giving them strategies that they might connect to differently. And by differently, that means that we have to examine what kids are doing and think about how are these kids best going to learn. Some of them are auditory learners. They learn by listening. Some of them are visual learners. They need to see it. Some of them are tactile learners. They need to touch it, or they need to be something with physical hands-on. And to me, it just makes teaching exciting. So that's, to me, why it's something that's very important. And it's not an old, as much as it's been around for a long time, it's not a dated practice. And it's not an old, stuffy kind of notion. I think it's current. I think it's fresh. And I think our approach to it as a teacher helps keep us fresh. I think, honestly, incorporating differentiation in your classroom and in every aspect of your delivery of instruction will help you avoid burnout, because you're always looking for new things. As the teacher, you're the learner. So you're always looking for new ways to get kids to connect to music and learn about themselves. So that's my why. And again, your why might be very different. And I think that's exciting too. And that's an awesome conversation to have.
Tying this all back to a teaching philosophy and approach seems really important.
Yeah, I think, and this is another one of those, if it were on the test, what would your answer be? What is your teaching philosophy? And had the opportunity to review a lot of cover letters for for job interviews. You get to read about people's teaching philosophy. And it's another one. My teaching philosophy in the community that I'm working in might be different if I were in a different community. I'm teaching in a different school with a different socioeconomic background or different inclusion of kids. So my personal philosophy is one of inclusion. I have a spot in this department for everyone, no matter what your experience, no matter what your ability is. If a senior, in fact, this happened, a junior came to me at the end of last year and said, I want to be in band next year. Okay, great. What do you play? I don't play anything. Okay. Well, what do you want to play? I want to play percussion. I already have 700 percussionists, but this kid was really motivated. Like, all right, you want to play percussion. Why do you want to play percussion? He's like, I just really want to be a part of it. It's something that I'm really interested in. And this is an important part too. All of my friends are in this, and I want to be a part of that. To me, that's it. Done deal. You're in the group. We'll find a spot for you. That's the way that it's been for me for many years, is that you want to be interested in music, and you want to learn about music, I will find a spot for you. With that said, I've also got the other end of that spectrum, those kids that have been diehards that are just amazing. So that does make some challenge when you have those kids in the same ensemble. And that's where the differentiation part does come into it too. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. How do I handle an ensemble where I have advanced students and less experienced students? But there's a way to make that happen. But
and
that's
there's a trickle-down effect here where differentiating your instruction properly or taking that piece to the next level can actually set you up to handle things like retention and recruitment and engagement. This isn't just about some educational pedagogical buzzword. There's these kind of intangible benefits that come with the technique too.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but actually, and think about that one student that came down and said he wanted to join because his friends were interested. When kids know that it's a welcome place, this could be a whole nother topic. When they know that the music room is an environment that they're welcome in and they're going to be accepted in, that certainly helps with recruitment. And once they're there and they actually connect to what you're doing and they're getting beneficial instruction, they're not going to quit. That's your retention. So you're right. This does all filter into various aspects of your program.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about the why, but when the rubber really hits the road, how do we go about this? What can we do as teachers to actually differentiate?
This is a really great area for reflection. And thinking about doing this, having this conversation about this, made me also think about it, which is exciting. So the first thing is about that large group. I'm going to be teaching my large ensemble. Well, if you think about band and you think about the grade levels of music, it's very difficult grading your band music or orchestra music by difficulty, because what's difficult for one instrument might not be difficult for another. But in differentiation, the younger level music is often differentiated by parts. So you would think, and that could be a real negative. You don't want to think that if I'm playing second clarinet, it means I'm second worst, or that means that I'm lower on the totem pole of value in the ensemble. So I actually spend a fair amount of time educating students that the number on their part does not equal the value of their contribution to the ensemble. One of the ways that I do that is I often talk to kids about what their role is. I have a silly word for it, mukma, melody, counter melody, and accompaniment. And we all have a different role, just like if you're on stage or on TV. The role doesn't mean that you're a subordinate or you're lesser. You're just playing a different part of the job. So if you think about differentiation in the parts, a second clarinet part, for example, in grade 1 music, doesn't always go over the break. Actually, it shouldn't really go over the break. Grade half, grade 1 and a half even, it's not going to really go over the break. So if you have beginning students, you're going to try to put them on that second clarinet. If you have kids that are in that section that are a little bit more advanced, you're going to put them on that first clarinet part. Obviously, as the grade levels get higher in your music, there are less of those between the first, second, and then eventually third parts. But that's at least a start of some of that. But that's the very first thing that you can look at in terms of large group differentiation. There's also things that I've done in the past with some of these beginning students that have joined the group. I often have to educate them about the process. Here's what's going to happen. You have to be honest. I operate on honesty. It's impossible for me to be a dishonest person. So if I have a kid that's just starting, and let's say it's a ninth grade student that's joining the ninth grade band, and this is their first year playing clarinet because you had this desire to learn clarinet. Reality is the other kids in this band are way more advanced than you are right now. That's okay. And I kind of preface them by preparing them. That's okay. How many notes do you know so far? I bring them in for a couple of lessons. I set them up actually with their Smart Music account, set them up with a method book, give them at-home assignments. This is what I want you to do. You're going to be doing this on your own, and I'm going to be checking in with you. Honesty is the best policy, and I tell them, you know 3 notes? Whenever you see those 3 notes coming by in the piece of music, play those 3 notes. If you get a measure, great, get 1 measure. You get 2 measures, awesome, get those 2 measures. Let me know this is the other part. Let me know when you got those 2 measures, because what you really want to do with those kids that are on the struggling end of the spectrum or just inexperienced end of the spectrum, you want to encourage them. So you celebrate every tiny little victory like they're the champion. And they truly are the champions. Because what happens is you piece those together. In a week, they have a phrase down. In 2 weeks, maybe they have 2 phrases down. In a month, they can actually play 1 of the 4 pieces that's in their folder. And that's the kind of thing that you want to do. That's how you differentiate with beginners in a large group. Another way to incorporate the differentiation with your more advanced students is absolutely to supplement what you're doing in the classroom and put them in the practice room. You could even do that if you have the availability. This is another one that's based on your physical plan. If you have practice rooms that you can supervise, I have practice rooms with windows that I could actually see what's going on. And some people might see this as a negative, but I don't. None of my practice rooms are soundproof, which to me is a great thing. So I could actually send somebody in a practice room and I can hear whether they're practicing or not. And if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing instead of, maybe doing homework. So you can actually try to do that. Maybe have them do something else. Another way to try to differentiate within that large group is having some of those more advanced students be in that mentor position. We're working on measure 17 to 27. Let me just hear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is now our small ensemble. Within our large ensemble, I want to hear you guys really articulate this passage with good clarity. I want to hear the dynamics being exaggerated. I want to hear you really emote. That's your example. So now, within your large ensemble setting, you just made a small ensemble, a chamber group, and now they're going to be modeling for the less experienced kids. Gives them a little bit higher elevation, a little different expectation. Their point B that we're getting them to is a little higher than the point A where they started. So you have to be creative. And I think that by nature, teachers are creative people, but it takes that introspection and kind of sitting there for a little while thinking to yourself, how the heck am I going to deal with these amazing kids and these beginners? And I guarantee you, if you come up with one activity every other day that pushes them and helps to bring the younger students along, everyone will be happy. So there are challenges, but the benefit greatly outweighs those challenges. So those are a couple of suggestions to differentiate within that large ensemble setting. Next up is, what do we do for at home and in the practice room? So at home or the practice room, you have a little bit of flexibility here. So here's where Smart Music certainly can come into play, which is where teacher assignments can be really helpful. You can have kids, you can easily differentiate by assigning different students different levels. You can assign them a different piece of music. You can assign them different. What I like to do if I'm sending a student into the practice room, you give them some parameters. So I want you to search, I tell them what search parameters. Select concert band or whatever group you're working with, select the instrument, select the difficulty. I want you to select the range. I want you to select easy. And I try, if they're going to do a lot of sight reading, I have them select easier levels. Select very easy, and then have at it. Go to town and start reading through and start working on some of that. If it's a less experienced student, I will give them a very specific assignment. You're going to work out of SI Book 1, and I want you to work. We're going to start, and I'll sit down with the kid. We'll start. Here's where we're going to start. Number, whatever it is, 37. Your goal, by the end of this period, I want to see if you can get up to 47. And let me hear your best one. Call me in to listen to your best one. And, of course, ask me questions if you need specific instruction. So differentiating that at-home practice is actually much easier than it sounds, because you know your students, because you've already thought about this in advance. You've already done your research. You've already figured out, at least to a degree, what you think is going to help motivate them and where they need to go. So you literally just assign them that. And I use the word assignment carefully because anytime you get into that assessment mode, you could scare a kid off. And really, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to encourage them with our assessments and make them realistic. So you want to make sure that you have your evaluation set to not strict, right? So that when you're having a student that's at a beginning level, you kind of give their evaluation a little bit of wiggle room so that they feel encouraged to get each step ahead. And up here you see on the screen, free practice. Kids learn, as just like we do, from success and from having failures. And one of the things that students need to learn is embracing when you get something wrong, but not stopping there. It's one of the things I try to tell students. The problem is not making a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes. The thing that makes the difference all the difference in the world is, what do you do after a mistake? If you wallow in making a mistake, well, that's not very good. But if you think about the mistake and then you go forward from it, that's the important thing. And they get that from practicing on their own. And the smart music element really helps them, versus when I was trying to practice as a student and didn't have anything to help guide me along, I didn't know if I was doing it right or wrong. I wound up practicing mistakes a lot. So I wound up practicing mistakes really well. And then just like any bad habit, when you've learned something incorrectly, as I'm pushing valves, as you learn something incorrectly, it's very hard to undo that. So practicing, understanding what you're doing, practicing it right, that gives them that self-differentiation. And you know what? The other thing too, once they get proficient at playing at that very easy level and they feel encouraged, you have to give them a little push and say, all right, try to hit that medium level. Go for it. What's the worst that happens? You get some notes wrong. Give it a try. So that's a little bit of self-differentiation, encouraging students to take calculated risks so that they actually have a chance to succeed with something they've never done before.
And that plays into a whole bunch of other kind of education buzzwords, right? Zone of proximal development, student ownership, all that kind of stuff. I mean, this differentiated instruction can be a vehicle to access a whole bunch of other techniques on top of it.
Yeah, the key word being self-directed, self-reliant, responsibility. Think about the world. I mentioned earlier, kids are different today. Kids live in a world that they a lot of them, and this is not a negative thing, but they lack responsibility. That's a criticism on young people today. You lack responsibility. You can't take care of yourself. As teachers, we have the option, or the opportunity rather, to help get them to become self-reliant. It could be as simple as putting your folder away, not leaving your instrument out. It could be as complex as, I want you to choose a piece and I want to hear you play it, and really go for it. Be self-directed, become self-reliant. Reading music by itself, understanding the notation, to me, is responsibility. You're learning how to become an independent musician. That's the ultimate goal, is for students to become independent musicians. It starts by encouraging them to take responsibility for their own learning. And differentiation is one vehicle to get them to do that.
So what about the smaller group?
Now, if you're in a great teaching opportunity where you're able to offer small group lessons or sectionals, and I would even do this in a big room, it's a great time to take your more advanced students. And we know this, mentorship can be extremely positive. Partner practicing is incredibly good. You get students to work with other students. Very simple exercises like tuning. You can set them up with a visual tuner so that one student plays a pitch, then they match it, and they actually talk about it. Some kids are great with talking, and they understand what they're doing. Maybe they're a better talker than they are a performer. So they can actually explain their tuning. And what are you doing? Your note sounds really good. What am I doing with my embouchure to make this sound really happen? Having them explain to each other is often really effective. Peer-to-peer is sometimes, for some students, stronger than teacher to student. That could be also recruitment and retention, right? Peer-to-peer in conversation is way stronger than teacher to student. So this happens in teaching also. If Johnny, I forget their names now, Susie and Johnny, if Susie can tell Johnny how she's playing her scales that fast, what are you doing with your fingers? Oh, I'm keeping them close to the keys. And that's what I'm doing. And instead of lifting them way up like this, I'm able to keep them closer, and I do this. That can help spark something in another student. So giving kids the opportunity to let them teach each other is a great way to help role model. One thing about that too, I find it really helpful to talk to my mentor students, my more advanced students, to teach them how to be teachers. Because often we think of them as advanced students. You're a wonderful player. Now go and teach this other not advanced player, but they don't know how to teach yet. So I like to encourage them to, or give them a couple of teaching techniques of here's how you explain things. Here's how you think about things so that they know how to work with another peer. So that's a great way to differentiate within a small group. Modeling good tone, especially I find tuning to be really a great one with each other because they can really hear when it matches. And when they hear those waves all of a sudden lock in, you just see light bulbs go on all over the place. Or even just characteristic tone. You have a great sound. Prompting kids with questions, asking them to have questions with each other, getting that conversation happening is differentiation. Oh yeah, I was going to say that as far as like mentoring your mentors, often teaching kids the criticism sandwich, I like to call it. You have to tell them something positive. Tell the kid that you're working with, the student you're working with, tell them something positive before you give them a critique, and then tell them another positive on the other side. So that way they're not, the criticism is couched in something positive. So that way it's not just a critique fest. You don't want them to go down the negative road. So often you have to coach those students along. But once they get comfortable with this kind of scenario, they get really good at it. And again, as a teacher, it's exciting to hear other students. And I often learn, oh, I never thought about explaining it that way. Hearing a student explain it to another student. So that's a fun way to differentiate within a group too, within a small group.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about how to differentiate this stuff, some strategies for different size groups. What are we differentiating? What kinds of things are we teaching in these differentiated ways?
I think that we can differentiate anything about our ensemble work and our individual work. And we're going to talk about how do we approach these different ideas. But really, what you do as an individual, you also do in the ensemble. Because you would think that you only do technical things by practicing. I'm going to practice some etudes. So I'm going to differentiate how I'm doing my etudes. Well, you do technical things in an ensemble as well. And we'll get to more specifics to those and look at some examples of that too. So you're going to differentiate between your technical skills, which could be scale, it's going to be rhythms, it's going to be articulations, it's going to be patterns, and you're also going to differentiate your ensemble performance skills. The key thing being that you isolate and are clear with what those skills and goals are with your students so they know what they're practicing. They know not only what they're practicing, but why they're practicing. It's very, very important to share the why of what we're doing for many reasons. One of which is they buy into it. They know why you're having them perform this exercise, then they're not going to argue or groan when it's time to work on your scales. Why am I working on my scales? Here's why you're going to work on your scales, because the scales, and I just did an article about this too, because your scales are the vocabulary about the story that we're going to read. If you don't know how to read the words, how are you going to read the story? This is why we practice scales. You have to understand the words before you can say a sentence. Nobody argues about playing scales, and they're learning those patterns. So understanding why and what is really important. So putting them into context, both technical and your ensemble skills. Breaking down your big picture into small segments, that's what we're going to be working on, differentiation.
Awesome. So this is where I get to plug you a little bit, Chris. You literally wrote the book on this.
It's pretty exciting. And this is one of those great opportunities that came along that has been so fortunate for me personally and as a teacher that I'm so thankful for, working with Dr. Boonshaft and putting these ensemble development, this whole series together, being part of this greater curriculum of sound innovations, which I love the overarching philosophy of sound innovations, which is we want to help students from the second the instruments come out of the case till the time they become adults and are playing in a community band, even beyond college, playing in a community ensemble as an adult. We want to help create resources to help along that path all the way through every level of musicianship. And the Ensemble Development Series is focused on getting the ensemble to connect to music and that big picture down to small individual concepts. Sitting down and really taking a lot of perspective. Dr. Boonshaft will tell you that we've sat for hours and hours thinking about what does it take to be in, what skills does it take to be a band member or even an orchestra member, as a member of an ensemble. It's very different to be playing in an ensemble than it is to be playing as an individual. And kind of figuring out what those differences are is how this curriculum came about. And that's what it is. And you can see the 3 different levels that we have there. Green is intermediate, purple is advanced, and the gold is the young band. The gold level came along because so many teachers that use the green or the purple in their middle schools and high schools, so many elementary teachers came to us and said, do you guys have an elementary level of this? That we brought it to Alfred. They said, let's produce it. Let's make it happen. And it has gotten such great feedback from directors that we're super excited to share it. So some of our examples today are going to come from that, and I'm looking forward to explaining how to maybe incorporate some of those into your rehearsal.
Awesome.
All right, so here's where we're going to start seeing some of our examples of how do we differentiate. We're in a small group. If you think about your small group and specific things that you're going to differentiate or that they have to learn, how about what their challenges are? Some kids are learning their fingerings. So actually just some kids you can model, have students show each other, and I do this very often, especially if it's a fingering that I might not have at the tip of my brain right away. What is that fingering for high G on clarinet above the staff? Oh, I know that Jerry knows that fingering. Jerry, what is that? Can you guys please show that? Great. That's differentiation. That's putting kids in a different role. Kids are going to differentiate between challenging rhythms. Some rhythm patterns are more complex than others. Maybe when rhythms change patterns, they have to learn how to adapt to those situations. Different techniques, and it's very different for different instruments. Partials, learning are different. I call them elevators. We're playing on a brass instrument. We're going through the harmonic series. My colleague calls them shelves. You're going to be playing on a different shelf. Which shelf are you playing on? Understanding all these different things and differentiating etudes. Different students can play. Here's a quick way of differentiating an etude. I don't think I have an example as one of ours that's on there. The green book has excellent unison etudes for the full ensemble to work on. Maybe your tuba player can play the full ensemble etude, can play the full etude, but maybe one of them can only play 8 measures of it. So when you think about your point A to point B, depending on the different level of expertise on your student, you can challenge them by your goal this week. I want to hear those first 4 bars, and they're going to be the best 4 bars you've ever played in your life. You're going to be playing the entire etude. I really want to hear every articulation with clarity. I want to hear that this tempo. That's how you differentiate that type of thing. All right, let's get to some examples. I want to see it on the screen.
Okay. I'm going to get out of here and start pulling up some stuff in Smart Music.
All right.
Here's one of the rhythmic examples you were talking about.
Yes. So here's a rhythmic example. Now, if you're playing this one along 37, this is 37 from the green book. So if you look at this one, very easy way to differentiate it through Smart Music. Well, first of all, I'm pointing at my screen like you can see my screen, but you can't. If I click on the metronome, that's going to help them along. It's going to be keeping the beat for them. It's going to be helping them with that beat. If you want to make it a little more challenging, take that off. Yeah, you want to take another level of differentiation, put subdivisions on. That's going to help them do that also. If you want to have students, those tactile learners, I'm a fan of tapping your feet. I think that kids do need to tap their foot. I know it can become obnoxious. They're all tapping their foot on stage. But from an educational standpoint, have them start tapping. So if a tactile learner is there, I want to see your foot go up and down while you're tapping this. You differentiate this exercise with the tempo. 68 is a pretty comfortable tempo for 16th note pattern like this. You might want to push a little bit faster. If you make it faster, it's also going to, I don't know which instrument this is. You're also going to talk about articulation if you're talking about increasing the tempo. If you have a group of kids that are in front of you, some of them are advanced, some of them are more beginner. How about I have these 2 students? We're going to have an A group, we're going to have a B group. A group, I want you to play quarter notes on this C. You're going to play quarter notes to the exercise. B group, you're going to play the exercise that's up on the screen. I often do this. I project Smart Music up on the screen in the classroom, and it works out really, really great. It gives me a lot of opportunities to point to things up there that's on the screen and also to have them play along with it while we're doing it. So you can have a group play quarter notes. Or I have a group that needs to work on long tones. This is a rhythm exercise. I have a very good beginner clarinet player that's working on their throat tone G's and getting to get a good characteristic tone with that. You're going to be playing, Jerry, you're going to be playing this rhythm of 37, and Susie, because you have great characteristic tone, you and our beginner are going to play this G, and you're going to sustain a G for 4 measures all the way through this. Think about the skills they have to do with that. So many simple ways that you can take an exercise like this, make the focus a rhythm. I can make the focus a long tone, and if I have 5 students or 10 students in front of me, you can differentiate within that group very easily. Tempo, subdivision, you can take all the training wheels off, turn off the subdivision, turn off the metronome, and let's see how it goes. That's a great exercise for doing that kind of thing. See if you can find number 5.
No, that's a chorale. Got a scale. This one?
I believe that is number 5. So now number 5, this is from the Gold book. There are a lot of A and B exercises. In the green, which is the intermediate level book, and in the advanced level book, which is purple, there are A, B exercises, which are scale chorales. I'll talk about later. But these A, B exercises, we give you the, first of all, in any of our ensemble books, we're not telling you how to teach. The expert in the room is you. All we're doing is providing exercises, a lot of exercises, for you to do what you do best, for you to figure out how to use them, for you to figure out how to differentiate them. In this case, you can look at this really quickly and say, line B is a different skill set than line A. The idea of this scale builder is, you can see we're building A, B flat, C, B flat, C, B flat, B flat, C, D, C, B flat, B flat, C, D, E flat. We're adding a note to each one. If an exercise like this, you might want to have everybody play line A, depending on the level of the group. You might want to have everybody play line B. Actually, I would do that. Then you can have any interaction that you want between line A and line B. Some kids on line A. You could put sections on line B, half of the group on line A, the other half of the group on line B. Now we're going to switch roles. Every other person on line A. A, B, A, B, A, B. Great, we're going to do it that way. You can figure out how best to differentiate this on ability. Not only differentiate on ability, but differentiate on the skill that you're trying to address as a teacher. I can easily take this exercise, line B, and I'm going to turn this into a flexibility exercise. I want to take line B, everybody. We're going to slur in 3-note groupings. So slur measure 1 to measure 2, measure 3 to measure 4. Very simple explanation. And now I have everybody working on sustaining their sound, making an even tone between the pitches, keeping your embouchure firm, however you want to do it. And then for other kids, I want to make this A line. We're going to work on the technical skill aspect, or the scale aspect of this exercise. We're going to play this all articulated. Maybe I want to make it faster, so we can change the tempo in here. We're going to make it without the subdivision or with the subdivision, metronome or no metronome. If we're not going to do it with the playback, I'm just going to use Smart Music right now just as a visual reference. We're going to play this exercise twice. We're going to play it in 4/4 with no fermata, and then we're going to repeat it in cut time. So I'm going to explain to kids what cut time is. So many different ways that you, the expert in the room, can take an exercise like this, differentiate not only what you're doing, what your expectations of the students are, but also what the skill you're focusing on.
And I think what you're illustrating there, Chris, is that it's not necessarily about individualizing the content or somehow presenting different things to different kids, right? We don't need a lesson plan for every single student. We can use one exercise.
Absolutely.
And by presenting the exercise in different ways, each kid gets to access the learning style or learning approach that's going to connect with them, or that focuses on the thing that they most need.
Right. And I find that to be really exciting. I don't know if you can tell, but when I'm teaching, I'm pretty into it and pretty excited about it, because I think that learning, when they actually get it, is so exciting. There are very few things that can spark that excitement. And kids do reflect that. When they get it and you're excited about it and it actually works, I'm not talking about false, everybody gets a trophy just for breathing kind of a thing. True, actually, you got that. You've never done this before. Now you're really getting it. That's something to celebrate their achievement with. It's exciting. And that differentiation, while planning is a huge part of it, having that bag of tricks, having that, I can pull out 4 or 5 different things. A lot of them I just mentioned. If I wrote those down on a list, my bag of tricks for differentiation, boom, you're doing that on the spot. And you're also evaluating as a teacher, how is this lesson going? Are they actually getting this? If they're not, you don't have to stick to the plan. You better go back to your bag of tricks and find a different way of getting it. You know what? That playing quarter notes in the rhythm exercise is not working. The instrument's getting in the way. Let's try this, guys. You're going to continue to play that rhythm exercise, and I want you to play it really clearly. Make sure your tongue placement is correct for behind your top teeth, whatever it is. But I want you guys actually put your clarinet down, and I want you just to clap this. Let's change it, what we're doing. You know what I mean? So you have to have that bag of tricks and different ideas ready to go so you can do on-the-spot differentiation to get kids. Because the ultimate goal is to connect kids with music and to connect kids with learning about themselves through music. That's another teaching philosophy. I teach kids through music. I teach kids through music. I don't teach music with kids alongside. I teach kids, but the vehicle that I'm using to teach them with is music. And that's kind of what we're doing here, is getting what it is that gets to the heart of the matter. How do they learn? So those are great for small group right there. Those A/B exercises.
And so for larger groups, you had some other suggestions.
Yeah, today was Bring Your Kids to Work Day, which was really fun. My kids got to go with me to school, and they got to see this on my screen. They really love this picture. So differentiation, I think you kind of get the idea about me if you've made it this far into this presentation. You're learning that self-reflection and evaluating what we do as teachers is really important. So when I thought about differentiation in a large group, thinking about those more advanced students that maybe are in the same group as less experienced students, you have to differentiate your attitude. I think that our teacher tolerance is something that we really need to think about. Tolerance for mistakes, maybe understanding big picture and understanding that the process of learning music, it's literally a process, that we're going to get better today than we were yesterday. And as a teacher, what are we going to get better at today? If I'm talking about an ensemble skill, today's focus is going to be matching pitch on passing the tonic exercises. We're going to be really focusing on passing unison notes and really matching each other's pitch, evaluating that critical thinking aspect of what we're doing, listening, evaluating, adjusting, and trying it again. My tolerance for articulation precision might be secondary. Might have to go on the back burner just a little bit. It doesn't mean I forget about articulation, but I have to adjust my tolerance. I have to understand that my clarinet section has 9 kids in it today. Maybe 4 of those kids are super advanced and a few of those kids are not. I'm going to have to understand my tolerance in what it is that's going on and think about as an ensemble point A to point B. That still takes teacher preparation. That still takes teacher having a goal for yourself, having a goal that in this 45-minute period, we're going to go from here to there. But it also means that I'm not stopping in the middle of a rehearsal to yell at my 4 clarinets that did not execute that scale to my satisfaction. That's the teacher tolerance level of differentiation. Understanding that, hey, first of all, being able to listen to your ensemble and evaluate what's going on. And then taking that differentiation in your evaluation and understanding that you're going to have different levels of success as things go on. So that's the big concept in that. And celebrating all the excitement of when they do succeed with that.
And so to that end, you can work on almost anything.
Absolutely. That's the whole thing. All of this is totally teacher-driven. So if we look at what are we differentiating in a large group, and that warm-up aspect is, to me, the biggest payoff is in your warm-up part of ensemble rehearsal. And that's where the investment in this warm-up time, I mentioned earlier about sharing the whys. When I do other presentations, one of them that I like to do is the first 10 minutes. It's called the first 10 minutes. And one of the big aspects of that first 10 minutes is getting your ensemble to buy into what we're going to do. Meaning that first 10 minutes, which sometimes turns into 20 minutes, that first 10 minutes of investing in our ensemble techniques is going to pay off in huge dividends when you go to your literature. And kids, you're actually able to flip that paradigm of working on notes and rhythms. Most teachers, unfortunately, have to focus their rehearsal time on notes and rhythms. Notes and rhythms, notes and rhythms. We have to get the notes and rhythms. But what do we really want to be working on? We want to work on communication and emotion, right? That's that top of the pyramid that we're always trying to work toward. So if most of your career is focused on teaching notes and rhythms, and you very rarely get to that prize of teaching communication and emotion, you can understand why teaching is very, very frustrating. So one of my personal goals is to try to help flip that pyramid over so that where we're working, you get to spend most of that pyramid in communication and expression and connection to music. And that bottom part of the pyramid is your technique. So by focusing on large group ensemble stuff like tuning, technique, balance, rhythm, articulation, and dynamics, you're going to pay that off when it gets to your literature and you're actually working on communication. So let me show you a couple of quick ways on focusing on how we can differentiate within our large ensemble techniques.
I'm guessing you want to see the chorale.
Hey, sure, why not? Now, is that one of those should be actually, maybe I put the wrong number there. The chorale 52, I'm sorry, can you get 52 instead of 53?
I can.
Look at that, look how easy it is to switch between exercise numbers. All right, so if you look at this, loading up, and I have to be honest with you, I love how it loads up. I get it, even if I have a hitch in my internet connection, I can at least see the progress bars making I feel like I'm getting somewhere. So that loaded up great. So if you look at the A line on this, it's the scale. So now this is for the full ensemble, okay? So they have the full scale. So if they're working out of the books, you have the A line and you have your B line. These work interchangeably. You can have everybody work on the A line, everybody work on the chorale on the B line. And then if you have that mixed ensemble and some students are still working on their concert B flat and major scale, and this is their goal, their big success is going to be they're going to play the full 8-note scale this week. We're going to get them through that. They're playing the A line. And it works perfectly, the A line and the B line together. It's a little bit of that treasury of scales concept where you have a harmonized scale, but you as the director can pick who you want to play any part of the scale. This can be various students. It could be section leaders. It could be all second players. If you play second clarinet, second trumpet, second trombone, you're going to play the A line. You're going to be, I have one colleague who has students play it as a solo and gets kids a solo opportunity. You're playing the A line, only if they're comfortable with that. They stand up and they play it as a solo. So you can work on differentiation this way, picking who's going to play the ensemble part. Number 10, if you can find gold number 10.
14.
Actually, any of these, you can, going on that A-B example I was mentioning earlier, here's a flexibility exercise. I want to play this 2 times. The second time cut time is the quickest, easiest way as an ensemble to differentiate. Getting those partials and getting your woodwinds. I am a believer that flexibility exercises are important for woodwinds, just as they are for brass players. There's value in playing chromatic scales during a flexibility exercise, but I think there's even more important playing these flexibilities along with your brass players, because you can totally concentrate on getting your fingers close to the keys, playing with accuracy, listening around the ensemble, tuning. We're playing octaves and fifths. You can really work on those. So anyway, a quick way to differentiate this exercise, play it twice, second time, cut time. How about we differentiate it? We're going to change the focus of this exercise to articulation. I want you to articulate every note. So forget the slurs. We're going to tongue every note. We're going to bop this one. How about that? We're going to make this a precision exercise. Let me hear you bop this. Everybody play just short attacks, no sustain. Awesome ways to differentiate and keep things fresh and exciting. And the gold number 10, when we get to that, it's another A-B exercise. So you as the teacher, again, ultimately, you are in charge. You are the teacher that, there we go. You're the one that's in the front of the room, and you're the one that's going to be, always have your wheels going with how are you going to connect to your students. There it goes. See, look how it feels good. I see that blue line turning green. So here we go. So we have this one, perfect intervals exercise. Tuning intervals is, to me, the most effective way to get your ensemble, well, next to playing in unison. Playing unison octaves is a quick and important way of getting your ensemble to play in tune. Playing perfect intervals is second. You can easily hear, even if you don't know what a perfect fourth is, perfect fifth, or perfect octave, getting students to learn their musical instinct through perfect interval exercises is so important, and they get it. Tuning is a feeling as much as it is an auditory thing. So these types of exercises, now if I think about a technical variation on how to make this more simple for a student, that B line is really important. Having students play that B flat for 7 counts, I can tell them to tie that note and make it 7 counts. That could be a challenge for some students. Getting your airspeed to go regulated, getting your embouchure to stay firm for that long, taking that breath on count 8 rather, and playing with a quick full breath so you're ready for the next one. For your other players, playing that A line, if I want to make that more difficult or more challenging for some kids, how about we do those 3 half notes as a slur? If I'm a brass player, that's way more challenging than it is to tongue those notes. So getting that to work on airspeed, and you give them these tips as they're going to do it. Here's what we're going to do, everybody. We're going to play that A line. I want you to slur those 3 notes. Here are the challenges that are involved in that. Always sharing that why. Why are we doing this? Because when we go to our music and you see a slur like that, I want you to memorize what it felt like to play that and connect it even specifically. In measure 47 of blah, 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 you're going to be doing this. This is an exercise that's going to help you do that better. So those are some ways to differentiate between those.
Okay, so what about differentiating percussion?
I'm going in hyperspeed mode because time flies so quickly, and I really do value everybody that's listening to this and watching this. Percussion, to me, is something that is so important to have your students involved in. Kids did not sign up to be in your group to watch everybody else play. Students signed up to be in percussion just like your clarinet players did. They want to be playing music. They want to be involved in every aspect of your class. whether that's that warm-up. So for all those ensemble development exercises, percussion is an integral part of that. When we're doing a passing the tonic exercise, the tonic, the root, the note goes into the percussion, just like every other section. So keeping your students involved, not busy, is really important for the percussion section. So I was fortunate enough to be part of another project called Sound Percussion. And this I co-authored with Dave Black, who is just an absolutely incredible human being and thoughtful educator and composer and writer and colleague. And again, just like with Dr. Boonshaft and I, we thought through so many different ways of percussion education. And here's the thing. My primary instrument is not percussion. My primary instrument is trumpet, but I'm a composer. So my primary instrument is also writing music. So I can play some keyboard. I write for bands. I also write for string orchestra. So I'm not just a specialist on one instrument. I try to learn as a lifelong learner. I want to learn as much about everything. I'm a music educator, and it's all music. So thinking about teaching students, thinking about percussion, talking with Dave, how can we best teach students that are in percussion? And this is what we came up with sound percussion. You can actually even go to the next slide here. So the way that sound percussion is put together, we have 3 different types of exercise. We have sound concepts, we have sound reinforcements, and we have sound combination exercise. I wanted to show this screen so that you can see the sound concept idea. What we do is we involve everybody in unison in the percussion section. We have snare drum, bass drum, accessory percussion, mallet percussion, and timpani. Those are all 4 books, plus the teacher score. They all perform these together. So if you look at sound concepts, 36, 37, 38, 39, the concept here is group of 2 eighth notes. And you can look what we did there. I wanted to show these in a row so you can see. Beat 1 are the 2 groups of eighth notes, then beat 2, beat 3, then beat 4. Exercises that follow this continue that pattern. Beat 1 and 2, beats 2 and 3, beats 3 and 4. The eighth notes are on beats 1 and 4. So the sound concepts are all introduced in unison for the entire percussion section. And this is for group instruction and for individual instruction. So you can use these in any combination. If I have one student, this is a great snare drum method. Amazing individualized snare drum method. It's a great timpani method. It's a great mallet percussion method. If I had another hour, I would talk to you about the mallet part, but maybe another time we'll do that. But the idea is everyone is in unison. And everybody, if you think about differentiated instruction, right now everybody's part of the team. Easy ways to differentiate this, you take different tempos. Students learn rhythm at a comfortable pace. You want to differentiate percussion instruction, slow the tempo down. You immediately think go faster and make it harder. You want to make it really hard? Go slow, right? That makes things really, really hard. So those are sound concept exercises. Now we could go to looking at number 13. We have that one ready. Level 2. Oh, that's perfect. That's sound reinforcement. So now if you look at sound reinforcement here, you'll notice they're still in unison, okay? But what happens in sound reinforcement? We now add dynamics and we add accents. So we start to differentiate the difficulty level of what the expectation is. I also want you to notice that this is the snare drum and bass drum part. Did you notice that the bass drum part is not just playing quarter notes the whole time? I don't want, and Dave did not want, that bass drum student thinking, oh, all I'm going to do is play quarter notes. That's a really important part. The bass drum part is really important. Keeping a steady beat is essential. However, I'll look at music, especially modern music, that bass drum player is doing a lot of expressive playing in their part, a lot of technical playing in their part. So they're also playing in unison, and they're playing some of these rhythms too. Now, when it does get super complex, we're doing like faster 16th note patterns, we do have the bass drum switch to 8th notes so that it doesn't become too muddy. And sometimes they do play the 16th notes also, but that's differentiation right there with sound reinforcements. They're playing in unison, but now with accents and dynamics. The next level, which is going to be sound combinations, you can find anyone that's a sound combination. There you go, 32, any one of those. What happens here in sound combination, we're now taking students here, and you'll notice that we're no longer in unison. Now they're playing as independent musicians. So the objective here was to take students from playing in unison and being part of the group to now, like we mentioned earlier with our differentiation, we're trying to help students become independent learners. to become self-directed, to become self-guided, to become responsible human beings in life. This is one little part to do that. Now you have to count on your own. If you're playing bass drum and snare drum only on this one, you're going to be looking, you see that they have different responsibilities. So they went from being in unison with no accents and dynamics to being in unison with accents and dynamics to now being independent and being an independent playing musician where you're responsible for your own part and playing as part of a larger ensemble. And that's kind of how this whole curriculum is designed in all the different aspects: sound rhythm, sound rudiments, sound roles, sound combination, and sound performance at the end, where they get to actually play on performance pieces too. That's just a very quick overview of the sound percussion curriculum. And there's a really exciting part of sound percussion that if you're looking at the sound percussion curriculum, you have to actually look at, which is in our extra material segment coming up, which would be our SI Online. So the SI Online is our partner, is our audio and visual partner to the written curriculum. So I don't want you to not realize that this is a part of it. It's one of the things that I want to yell from every mountaintop. Don't forget to look at the video content. You can see on the screen here, this is just a snapshot of a sound combination exercise where you can see in quad screen the actual performance of the sound combination exercise. So the teacher, I'm a trumpet player. There are many teachers that are not percussion specialists that may not be comfortable teaching, how do I do a roll? Well, we actually have a great demonstration of how to do rolls, both open rolls and closed rolls, not only how to do them, but the application of them in your music. How do you apply a 17-stroke roll in music? So we went that next step of not just demonstrating what it is that you're doing, but how. How do you use it and what's the application of it? So that's the teacher perspective part of it, looking at it as a teaching tool for teachers. The next part is the sound combination exercises. If you look at this one, this is a quad screen one where all the parts are recorded for students to demonstrate their posture, their performance, their amazing performances. There are many sound combination exercises where we only recorded timpani and mallets. Then the student fills in the missing part. We wanted to somehow reach out and grab students that maybe don't have a percussion ensemble to play in. You're now part of a percussion ensemble. Grab your snare drum, get your sticks. You're now going to play these sound combination exercises as part of the ensemble. A little bit of a music -1 aspect. If you're old enough to know the music -1, now students are playing part of that role. So that's one of the support materials that we have for teachers and for students. And to tie in differentiation with that, there's also PDF material, so you can have extra material for students, for more advanced students. And if you need to slow down the pacing a little bit, we need to spend a couple more minutes on exercise whatever. There's a lot, especially for book 1, for SI book 1. There's so many downloadable PDF resources that you can give your advanced students extra exercises to work on. History exercises, theory exercises, content that they can really work on while you're spending extra time helping other students get up to speed where they need that too. So the idea is, again, delivering content to students to connect them to music, learn about themselves through music, and to become better at what they do.
So along those lines, Smart Music has some extra material as well, including the Sightreading Builder. I think this is one of the kind of latest and greatest tools in Smart Music, and it's perfect for differentiation because you have the ability to customize everything. So we can take a peek at that as well. So you get to select exactly which instruments you want to have play the exercise. Again, you have control over the tempo, set how long it is, and then you can choose how difficult you want the sight reading exercise to be and customize that. So you can customize range, you can customize rhythm. Maybe the student isn't quite ready for dotted rhythms yet, but we do want them to work on these syncopations. And so we can have access to this kind of limitless number of exercises. And this is great for differentiating because you can send different students different difficulty levels. You can provide that extra practice. You can push some students, shore up concepts with other students. So often differentiation can feel difficult because there's this need for more and more content, right? There's need for more and more material to make sure that we're meeting those needs that are changed from student to student, to make sure that every student feels included. And now you have access to something that's kind of this unlimited repository because it's generating everything each time you pick something new. Only other thing I would say about Smart Music's resources is that all of those sound innovations books, including sound percussion, that we've shown examples from today are in Smart Music. And so, as Chris was pointing out, this is a great way to display something in class and then have what you display in class match the at-home practice. So you can use Smart Music to develop some of that consistency when a student moves from large group differentiation to small group differentiation to at-home differentiation. And so by having that consistency with the tool, and then the way that you're serving that content up for students, that can go a long way towards keeping kids engaged and kind of making sure that they know what to expect. So
it's important to know that all of Book 1 is entirely free in Smart Music. All of Sound Innovations Book 1 for band and strings, entirely free. Try it out. I have to be honest with you, the Sightreading Builder is fantastic. I can't believe how smoothly it is, easy to run between the different parameters that are in there, and to have endless possibilities is just a great gift to be able to have inclusive as not an extra subscription to something else. It's inclusive with it, which is, to me, a phenomenal resource by itself.
You took the words out of my mouth. So all of that's part of a single Smart Music subscription. So we got some time for questions, I think. Let's see what we got so far. Looks like we got one question, Chris. So I'll pass this one to you. How should differentiated instruction be documented for administrators that aren't familiar with what we do?
That's a really great question. What I often do, depends on your evaluative model for your administrators. Many of us have administrators that are not music specialists. So what I try to do is to try to have a meeting before any kind of evaluation is coming up and talk to them about whatever your evaluation model. We use a modified Daniels. So correlating some of the terms in an evaluation and actually educating your administrators. I would schedule a block of time to just sit down and talk with them about how it looks in your class, because they might not recognize it. If you have a good administrator, which I've been very fortunate to have, they recognize good teaching. But sometimes they need to have the vocabulary to connect the dots with them. So if you have an administrator that is outside of your regular discipline, you might need to correlate what you do with maybe something that's familiar to them. If they're an English specialist, correlation between revising a document. So you have your students write essays. We have students play things over again. What are they doing when they're revising an essay? They're looking at their grammar, they're looking at their content. When I'm revising my clarinet section in this ensemble rehearsal, I'm giving them some information. They're rewriting their draft, and then they're presenting it to me again. So I think the best way to get documentation for your administrators is to have a conversation with them and educate them. You might even want to come up with a document, an actual written document, correlating. This is what it looks like in a English class or in a math class, and this is what it looks like in a music class, and actually draw those lines for them. So they actually, I think most evaluators and administrators want to understand what we're doing, but maybe they just don't see it as clearly as we do, because we live in the world of music. And to them, it could be, it's literally learning a foreign language. So I think that's really important to have that conversation.
Oh, that's wonderful. So our other question we got was, can't get students to use Smart Music or get them to practice. I bring Chromebooks into the classroom, provide times we can do it, show them how to do everything. Any tips? From my side, from the Smart Music side, I would say start small. Really focus on modeling the tool use in class. You said you were showing them how to do everything. This can be as simple as manipulating the accompaniment and the metronome on screen every day and sending them home with something really simple. Maybe that one of those B lines from Sound Innovations that's just whole notes. The other thing that I can usually show you right now in Smart Music would be to manipulate the assessment tolerance. So right here, you can make things easier on them by switching it to lenient tolerance. You can set that up in their assignments too. And that can help get kids to be really successful with Smart Music if they're feeling frustrated. Takes the pressure off. I think, especially for beginners, having that kind of start to the tool feel really good, it goes a long way. Chris is the one actively using it with kids in the classroom every day, so I'd be interested in his thoughts on this too.
Yeah, I would say, well, two things on that. One, if you have the availability for any kind of practice room situation, you try to get them actually using it that way. If you have the availability for a screen, for a projector with a screen, when smart boards were the big new thing, I asked for not having a smart board. I just wanted a projector and a screen. So maybe actively seeing them using it in the classroom. You can even project it up on the screen in Ensemble if you want to do some rhythm exercises, and maybe just even having that modeling them using it, they might get curious to use it. For an idea for getting kids to practice, I think that speaks to what I mentioned earlier about kids at home being pulled in so many different directions. I actually start my class, and depending on the age level of the group and also the maturity level of the group, I always start with a do now on the board. And it's always from SI book, whatever we're working. And if it's my advanced group book, the purple book, I put up a technical exercise or a flexibility exercise, a do now. We're going to do number 11. And I give them about 5 minutes of practicing the do now. Once they finish number 11 and they're comfortable with their performance on that, practice something in your music. And then I start the ensemble rehearsal. Now, my reason for doing that is I know they're not going to practice as much at home because they don't have as much time as they do. But if I get that 5 minutes at the beginning of every class period, those 5 minutes of practice add up. I think it adds up to over 15 hours in a given school year. So modeling the behavior of using smart music up on a screen, if you're able to do that, might help that. And maybe if your kids are the maturity level to handle it, a 5-minute practice session at the beginning of every class might give them that little extra help that they need. And it also gives you the opportunity to go around and give some specific instruction to those students. Or take attendance if you have to.
Yeah. Okay, well, I don't see any other questions. I want to thank Chris for being here and giving us his time and ideas and all of these wonderful tips. I want to thank all of you for being here and showing up and participating. Great questions. Thank you so much. And, of course, you can always reach out to us on social media. Let us know if you have other questions. Chris is on social media. Smart Music's on social media. So we'd love to hear from you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.